Hello, everyone. Welcome to this ACCA podcast. My name is Isabel, and I'm part of the team at ACCA that delivers student support. And today, I'm really pleased to be joined in this conversation by my fellow ACCA team member, Martin, who is an education support manager. Thank you so much for joining me today, Martin. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Isabel.
So today, Martin, we're going to be talking about question practice and mock exams. So question practice is one of the most effective ways to prepare, yet we know that some students don't always include this activity in their study and revision plans, and we'll maybe get into why that is later on in the conversation. But in this podcast, we want to explain why it's such an important activity, and hopefully we're going to inspire everyone watching or listening in to go on and complete at least one mock ahead of the next exam session. To everyone who's tuned in, we do really want you to make the most of your opportunities for question practice because it does take your revision to the next level. So with that in mind, let's get started with today's episode. And Martin, really pleased to have you here because I think we'll get into this in a bit, but I know that you have personal experience of studying for the ACCA exams and you know firsthand how question practice and mock exams benefit students. But before we get there, let's just start with an overarching question. What are the benefits of question practice?
Thank you, Isabel, and it's a pleasure to join you on this podcast today. And as you rightly said, I have just recently completed my ACCA exams, so I totally understand everything that comes, with this journey. To your question, now, first, question practice builds familiarity. The more you expose yourself to exam-style questions, the more comfortable you become with the format, the structure, and of course the examiner's expectations. So it sort of removes the fear of the unknown and replaces it with confidence. The other thing about question practice is that it reinforces your learning. When you practice consistently, not just in the final weeks but throughout your study period, you begin to see how the theory connects to real exam scenarios, and you're able to spot your weak areas early, and you have enough time to strengthen them. Um, it also improves your retention. So through spaced repetition, revisiting the topics and questions over time, you train your brain to hold on to information longer. So this is key for long-term understanding and not just short-term cramming. So obviously, ACCA exams require you to understand the concepts and apply them to the exam scenario. So this is very useful. Now, finally, and very importantly as well, it sharpens your time management. Practicing under timed conditions, you learn how to allocate your time wisely across different sections or different question types. And that way you're not just answering the questions, but you're doing it efficiently. So those are just some of the few advantages that I could point out about question practice.
And I'm glad you've mentioned at the end there time management, because we know that that's something that is a very common challenge for students, running out of time, for example, in an exam. Whereas, this is where question practice really helps you hone that exam technique. So, at what stage of their studies do you advise that students begin question practice, that kind of study activity?
Yeah, so students should start early. That's the straight answer. It's very tempting to push question practice towards the end, but really it's more useful if you start early from the very beginning of your study phase. Start engaging with the quizzes and the practice questions on the study hub, for instance. So that helps you check your understanding as you proceed and makes your learning more active than passive. So as you progress in your preparation stage, you can now move on to the practice platform. So this is where you start simulating the real exam environment, getting used to the structure, the pressure of time. And then in the final stretch, say 2 to 3 weeks before the exam, you can now prepare and take a full mock. So this is sort of your dress rehearsal, helps you identify last minute gaps, fine tune your time management, and of course, build your confidence. So you shouldn't wait until the end to start testing yourself. You can make it a habit to build this gradually into your study plan, and that's how you get the most out of question practice.
I like that. So build it into your study plans as early as possible, and you're working towards that mock exam about 2 to 3 weeks prior to the exam session. And we will definitely talk a little bit more about mocks in a minute. But you have just mentioned two very key ACCA resources. But perhaps you can expand on that and let us know what else is available for ACCA students.
Yeah, there are lots of resources available for ACCA students, and these resources are available for different stages of the preparation stage. So let's start with the Study Hub. So this is your digital textbook. It's got all the content that you need, to prepare for each of the exams. It's interactive, it's easy to navigate, and what I like about it that it's packed with quizzes and practice questions to help you actively engage with the material. And like I've said, start building in the question practice element. Now, for those taking the foundations in accountancy, FIA, or the applied knowledge exams, we also have the practice tests. So these are short, focused assessments that help you check your understanding and build your confidence very early on. There's also the ACCA practice platform, and this is where you get to experience the real exam style questions, because the platform mirrors the actual exam platform. So it's a game changer for me. You're not just answering questions, you're learning how to think, like an ACCA qualified professional. You're preparing yourself in the environment similar to how the exam will look like. And there's a lot of past papers, practice exams. The mock exams are hosted on the practice platform. So you really have everything housed in one platform. So yeah, those, just to mention a few of the resources available for students who are practicing or preparing for their exams.
Brilliant. And what I was going to ask, but actually we've already kind of given the answer, but I was going to ask at what point students should be completing their mock exam. So we've already said actually that's going to be 2 to 3 weeks before the exam session begins. But why is that the right time to do it?
It's important to attempt your mock as early as possible so that you have time to review your the results of your mock, reflect and address any weak areas you may have uncovered. So the approach to the mock is the goal is not really whether you're going to pass or fail the mock. It's about the lessons that you bring out using the mock. The mock sort of exposes your weak areas. So if you do it early enough, then you still have time to go back and work on the weak areas. And that puts you in a better place, to prepare for your exams.
Okay, that makes sense. Do you have tips to share as well on the best way to approach a mock exam? I think it seems like a silly question maybe, but I think there are different things that you can put in place, and the way that you can do a mock can shape how useful it is as an activity. So what's your advice on how to approach them?
Absolutely. The first thing is to do the mock under timed conditions. Yeah, because exam pressure is one of the things that make the exam difficult. It would be easy if the exam wasn't timed, but it's timed. There is a specific time within which you must deliver your answers. So you want to simulate the actual exam as you do your mock. So do it under timed conditions, do it under exam conditions. So you're obviously not going to have any distractions in your exam, no phones, no people walking into the room. So create that environment for your mock, and this will help you build your exam stamina and it will help you identify pacing issues. Are you spending too long on one question, or are you rushing through another question? Now, once you've done the mock, of course, you can take a break after you've completed it, but come back and review it, reflect on it, and pick lessons from it. We also provide debrief videos for the mocks. So these are very useful. Once you've reviewed your mock, you can watch the debrief videos, and that will help you in the learning process, even as you build up on the weak areas that you have identified.
And I'm glad you've mentioned the debrief videos, because you've set me up very nicely for my next question, because we've talked about practice and the act of practicing questions and completing a mock, but you've just there brought in the other aspect of this, which is debriefing afterwards and reflecting on it, because I guess that is as equally an important part, is to understand what went right, what went wrong, what you need to focus on in the future. So maybe you could expand on that and explain why debriefing and taking that time to debrief answers is so crucial.
Yeah, there is a lot of benefit. There are lots of benefit in debriefing your answers. I'll share a few. Firstly, debriefing provides constructive feedback. Whether it's from a tutor or a peer, this feedback highlights specific areas where you can grow. So it's not just about what went wrong, it's about how to get it right the next time. Now, debriefing also helps validate your progress. When you see positive feedback, or you notice that you're consistently getting certain areas right, it boosts your confidence and it confirms that your strategy is working. And that's obviously quite motivating. Thirdly, it also builds accountability, because when you know you'll be reviewing your answers, that encourages you to give your best effort during practice. And that turns, every session into a step forward, which is what you want to do as you prepare for your exams. Now, finally, debriefing supports targeted revision. So remember, you have the constraint of time. You probably have a few weeks ahead of your exam. So you want to focus your energy on the areas that will yield the greatest improvement. And that's what debriefing does. It helps you identify those areas, and you can focus on those areas in the little time that you have for your exam preparation.
I like the point actually about encouraging accountability, because I think whenever we're approaching something difficult, in any aspect, any part of life, it brings out an avoidant tendency, and I think we can be very prone to avoiding tricky things. And when you're studying for an ACCA exam, I'm sure everyone has the topics that they just don't want to approach. But if you have that accountability and you're going through your answers, you're kind of forced to reflect on the things that aren't going so well as the stuff that is going well. And I think, again, that leads me nicely to my next question, because I would imagine, and maybe you'll know more with your personal experience of sitting ACCA exams, that there is that fear. I think lots of students avoid question practice and they avoid mock exams because they're very scared of it going wrong. They're scared of failing that mock exam, and then they think that will set them back mentally. It will be an issue that they struggle to overcome. So do you have any advice? I don't know if you felt this way before, but do you have any advice for students who do feel that and are fearing the mock?
Yeah, thank you for that. And I'll be honest with you. I used to dread mocks. I used to dread question practice. And like you rightly said, I used to dread, my fear was that I would get it wrong. Okay. So, and I know I wasn't alone, because I was studying with a learning partner then, and I would notice that, the class was half full on the days that we are supposed to do a mock. So what I didn't know is that I was missing out on a crucial element of exam preparation. So what changed for me was my attitude and the view towards question practice, of course, from the advice by my tutors. So I began seeing mock exams as a safe space to make mistakes, yeah, and even to fail, okay? Because the objective is to pass the exam. It's not really to pass the mock. The mock is a practice, is an opportunity to practice. So I changed my attitude towards that, and I began looking forward to, attempting the mocks, and more importantly, reviewing them and using them to identify where I should focus my strengths in, the lead up to exam practice. So that would be my advice to students. Don't be afraid to fail the mock. Don't be afraid to attempt the mock. Just, do the mock in exam conditions and self-mark and, debrief. And that would be very valuable towards your exam preparation.
I think that's such a nice way to put it as well. Your aim is to pass the exam, not the mock. The mock, that's not the purpose of a mock exam. It has various different things that will help you in your exam preparation. But it's, yeah, I think concentrate on passing the exam. The mock will help you get there. So thank you for sharing. I just wanted to wrap up because we've run out of time, but I wanted to wrap up by asking you if you had any final advice for students.
Yeah, I think it's normal to feel that you're not ready to begin question practice, probably because you haven't covered, the entire syllabus, or because there are still areas that you're struggling with. So irrespective of that, my advice would be that you begin your question practice at least a month, ahead of the exam date, and only go back to your notes to address any weak areas that you identify. And then be consistent, do it consistently, build it, like we said, build it into your preparation period. Do as many questions as possible under timed conditions. That will help you build your exam strategy. And what that does is that on the exam day, it makes you less nervous. It helps you manage your time better, and also helps you to deliver quality answers that will increase your chance of passing.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time, Martin. I think it's been really good chat, and I've really enjoyed listening as well about your own personal experiences of going through this. So I think students will also appreciate that. So thank you for joining me, and thank you to everyone who has tuned in. This is all we have time for, but I hope we have inspired you to go away, plan your mock ahead of time, and make sure that you start integrating question practice into your study plans earlier rather than later. So thank you so much. Take care, everyone, and best of luck with your studies. Thank you, Martin, and goodbye.
Thank you, Isabel. Best of luck to everyone.